sanctuary if you're ready tonight. I know that it's all so heavy. Won't you let me inside? 'Cause I could be your sanctuary.
What's up guys, hope everyone is doing well. In this video I'm going to be trying my best to quickly and simply as possible go over my phase cycle theory when it comes to the patterns, the repetitive patterning that Bitcoin has shown when I have gone down to lower time frames, high time frames, and analyze the entire history of Bitcoin. But to go ahead and get it started here, the first thing, if we draw attention to the orange dots and the purple dots paired with the curves, you see first purple dot, the second purple dot is cycle one. That's when Bitcoin hit around $33 and ended at $20,000. And then from the second purple dot to the third purple dot, this is cycle three. So again, first purple dot, second purple dot, cycle two. Everything preceding the first purple dot is cycle one. And then from second purple dot to third purple dot is cycle three, which we are currently on, and we're about roughly halfway into. Purple dot to purple dot is in chronological order. That lines up with what is phase one to phase two. Orange dot to orange dot is beginning in reverse order, starting at the beginning of phase two and ending at the end of phase one. But here down to the right, I have, these are not to scale. I just stretched them out to show how you can identify these. So if I were to go down to the daily, I'm not going to do it in this video. I will have two cards linked beginning of this video that I've gone over in the past, not as up to date in terms of like price targets and whatnot, but they still include the same structural integrity because that's obviously not going to change going all the way back to 2009 and 2011. But the bottommost pattern right here is if I were to zoom in on the daily to everything that precedes this purple dot over here, the first one, this is what you would see. You can identify the cycles by the four peaks. That's the pink, the turquoise, the yellow, and the green. Fast forward to second cycle right here, the mid one, we see pink, turquoise, yellow, and green. The yellow finishes phase one, and the green finishes phase two. The ending of phase one is what is commonly known as a super cycle when Bitcoin hit around 1200 in 2013. The uppermost one right here is our current cycle three. We've seen our pink, we've seen our blue dot. The blue dot is correlative to 64 to 69,000, and then the purple dot the black dot lines up with the low that, as you can see on here, and the purple dot is when we, towards the end of this transition into the bull market, this bullish build up, and then after this purple dot is when things really begin to kind of fly off the handle and really kind of enter into a full-on bull market. So when it comes to the vertical lines here, these represent the halvings. Each yellow line is a bullish halving, each orange line is a bearish halving. In general, the colored lines are where the actual halvings occurred. As I've been going over a lot recently, I feel like it is, I haven't said this yet, but I think it's rather naive to think that every single halving is always going to be an indicator, something that happens that means bullishness is going to ensue afterwards. Clearly that is what has happened every single time so far from 2012, 2016, and 2020. But as I've been describing it and explaining it recently, my basis here is that when you have something that is static, like the halving, and by that I mean that it is unchanging in the sense that it is happening every 4 years. And the halving, if you don't know, is Bitcoin's, whenever Bitcoin mines, some sort of miner mines a block of Bitcoin and adds transactions to a new block, adding onto the chain. The reward that somebody gets from that has gone from 50 to 50 to 20, good grief. 50 to 25, from 25 to 12.5, 12.5 to 6.25, and so on and so forth. It halves every single time, obviously, but so far everyone's been bullish. I think this next one is going to be bearish because, like I said, having a static, but the price action of Bitcoin is something that is dynamic, and that can be proven, I suppose, through the fact that we are seeing the cycles lengthen, and then the phases within the cycles are lengthening. The bearish returns, the bear markets are less bearish, the bull markets are less bullish. That is essentially the same thing. When the cycles are going to lengthen, Bitcoin's maturing, it's decaying. It's a reason why the RSI is slowly trending downwards. It's setting lower lows every single time. It's because it's showing that the strength of Bitcoin over time is it's becoming less, it has less oomph behind it, it has less power. That's why it, again, like the things are the phases and cycles are lengthening. But leading into the next halving, so far everything is projected to around March, April, May of next year. I think that Bitcoin will hit around 180,000, 240,000 within that range. It may happen. It may start to reach the top range. Like, for example, when Bitcoin hit 58 to 64,000, we can say it ranged in that range. And I think that will be something similar. It might enter that range for the upcoming all-time high, maybe about a month and a half before March, April, May, or maybe even afterwards as well. But I think that the upcoming all-time high, generally and broadly speaking, will line up roughly with the upcoming halving to switch up the trend we've been seeing so far. The last thing for this, we've gone over this in the past, but we can see these time measurement tools down here. 33, 34 bars is really where things tend to stick. But in general, if you go right around beginning at a halving, you go out 30 to 35 bars. So far, every single time, this has encompassed the bear market range low. Like, for example, recently, assuming 15.4 thousand was the low back November, December of last year, when Bitcoin hit 20,000 and then went to $15.4 thousand approximately, that would be what a bear market low range is. Like, it did it in 2014 and 2015 when it ranged from around, like, I think it was like $100, $200 roughly speaking. I don't think it's always going to be like this. I think it'll be similar to that static dynamic argument I made earlier. Like, for example, this sixth one right here lining up like end of this decade roughly isn't going to line up with the actual low, but because how much phase two is lengthened, we'll see two of these occur. Like, for example, each of these previous ones, one of these happened per cycle, or my bad, one of these happened per phase, whereas this orange dot to this purple dot right here, this would be cycle 3's phase 2. Because of how much it has been extended in time, we have seen two of these occur within one phase, again breaking a trend we would have seen in the past, assuming all this is correct. By all means, I can be completely wrong. I don't think I'm going to be right per se. I mean, I think I have a potential to be right, but it's just a possibility. And by all means, do not make decisions on anything, like financially speaking, investment wise, based upon anything I'm going over in this video. Do your own research and come to your own conclusions. And if I'm going to give any advice, do not become emotionally attached to where your bias leans. Like, for example, if I go to see this chart right here, I went over in one of my recent videos, the turquoise pattern is what I think is going to happen according to my phase cycle theory. So, like, I don't need to get emotionally attached to that, think that's going to happen, because something like the orange path, which is still, as I've been saying, broadly speaking, I think the next upcoming all-time high, speaking without my bias, without the structure of my bias, I think it will generally happen sometime next year, 2025. If my halving thesis is wrong, that will also mean that the structure, the phase cycle theory, that thesis is wrong as well. It means the upcoming halving will end up being a bullish one, and we'll see something like the pink of the green path, where we will trade roughly sideways above 25,000. Maybe you see some wicks down like 24,000, or we'll go down to 20,000, which I think is the bottom of the bear bull market structure right now. Maybe, and down to 20,000, we could just as likely see some wicks down around 19,000. That's roughly where this white moving average, this 200 estimated moving average sits right now, which is an important one for Bitcoin generally, and also for other cryptos as well. But going back to this chart, so I've gone over everything but the price targets. Like I said, I already went over the upcoming bull market, 140,000, 280,000, sometime around the halving next year, March, April, May, maybe a little bit before, maybe a little bit after. So if I use this chart right here, we can see that if I take the retracement from the top of phase 1 to the bottom of phase 1 for cycle 2, we can then see that the 2.186 to 2.362 is what lines up with the one we'd be heading into, 180K to 240K. And then phase 2, around the end of this decade, broadly speaking, 2028 to 2032 is when I think the upcoming phase 2 will end up setting its all-time high. So that's going to run from around 1.1 to 1.4 million. Going back to the chart, that is what lines up right here, this final purple dot. Like I said, 2028 to 2032 could happen anywhere within that range. I lean more toward 2030 to 2032, but it could happen a little bit before. Back to this chart, the first peak of phase 1 for the cycle 4 would line up with the 3.664 to 3.773. We go to the up-to-date retracement. This lines up with 2.7 million to 3.3 million. That lines up with this area right here. Could, encompass a general range as early as 2038, as late as 2042, roughly. Again, I don't really have anything that I lean to in that regard, since it's just so far out into the future. I would just say 2038 to 2042 is probably the broad range it would occur. Given obviously what I am going over in this video is indeed at least sufficiently like 80% correct to end up being accurate. So if we go back to this chart, the final peak pushing 2048 to 2050 is going to line up with the 4.113 to 4.231. That is going to be around 6.2 million to 7.7 million. That is what lines up with this final orange dot right here. So to kind of summarize this real quickly, next upcoming, the all-time high, I think it's going to be around 180 to 240K. Like I said, around the halving. By the end of this decade, 2028, 2032, broadly speaking, 1.1 to 1.4 million. The first peak of the cycle 4's phase 1, around 2.7 million to 3.3 million. Again, around 2038, 2042, and then pushing 2038, 2042. I don't know if I said 2048, but then the one after that, pushing 2048, and then 2050 is a range, like I said, around 6.2, 6.4, up to around 7.7 million. I think that was really all that I wanted to go over in this video. Like I said, again, just to kind of summarize it all, I could be completely wrong about this. By no means, do not make any decisions based upon anything I've gone over in this video. I do think, in general, like long term, and when I say long term, I mean like 5 to 10 year long term, not kind of like a shorter, long term, like 2 years or whatever. I think Bitcoin will ultimately end up, trading at least roughly to this. So far, it is showing a logarithmic structure. There's people that think we'll see something like insanely hyperbolic, where we're seeing this kind of, I need to not do it on this chart since it's so laggy. We'll see something kind of like, I think it's a sigmoidal curve. We're seeing this kind of logarithmic progression, and then at some point, like for example, when adoption skyrockets or like whatever else, we'll just see Bitcoin go absolutely crazy and basically go exponentially parabolic rather than this kind of like slow-esque logarithmic growth we've been seeing so far. But all that being said, hopefully you enjoyed, and at the very least, I hope you were able to learn something and take something away from this in that regard. But everything gone over, I hope you all have a blessed day.
Ooh, I'm regretting now, won't I? See you forever, such a long